In the recording about the implications of diversity, I mentioned that globalization is influencing the context and membership of most organizations. That's part of the reason it's helpful to think about how organizations approach change and how that change influences fit. Approaches to organizational change can be categorized as being one of two general types: episodic and continuous. Episodic change might be what we think of when we think about making a change. It's a relatively unusual event in the organization that's intentionally initiated. Given that, successful approaches include efforts to unfreeze the current state of affairs. In other words, help organizational members understand the need or the reason for the change and prepare for something to be different. Similarly, after the change, successful episodic change includes efforts to refreeze, or to make sure the organizational members incorporate the change into ongoing practice. In contrast, continuous change is ongoing. The specific focus evolves as it's needed to help the organizational members work toward the shared goal. In some cases, then, effective process requires a freeze phase when no new initiatives are introduced, so members can reflect on the effects of the change, part of rebalancing. That provides perspective for future change, similar to the unfreeze phase of episodic. It makes sense that organizational change would be related to person-organization fit. The specific relationship seems to differ with the type of change, though. The focus of episodic change initiatives sometimes directly influences fit. You can probably think of several examples of organizations that had to change focus because of the current social and economic challenges. PO fit might also contribute to resistance to change, though, even if the focus of the initiative doesn't seem related to fit. Resistance based on fear of the unknown might reflect concerns that different patterns won't be as good of a fit for the individual, while resistance due to the fear of altered social relationships is consistent with the idea that perceptions of person-organization fit are based, in part, on the value of other organizational members. This goes along with one of the points from the New Analytics article. The authors say that the results of one of their studies suggest that organizations who want or need a stable workforce should emphasize hiring employees with shared values. Those two types of organizations also tend to have structural characteristics that create resistance to organizational change that could relate to person-organization fit. One barrier to change, referred to as work group inertia, is more likely when work groups have strong norms for completing the work, which would influence fit. Similarly, change can introduce threats to the power balance that can influence the degree to which a person feels like they fit. Whereas fit seems to influence resistance to episodic change, continuous change seems to influence who will fit. When an organization is characterized by continuous change, the reason for the change and the change itself both influence the organizational climate and therefore person-organization fit. One study in the New Analytics article found that employees who could adapt to changing cultural norms over time were more likely to consistently feel like they fit and were more successful than employees who were a good fit with a specific characteristic of the organization. This suggests members who demonstrate high levels of cultural adaptability may experience higher levels of fit in organizations that are continuously changing, independent of other characteristics of the organization. We can begin to understand the dynamics of organizational change by thinking about whether an organization is more likely to engage in episodic change or continuous change. In addition to influencing the process for change, the type of change influences the relationship between change and person-organization fit. Organizational characteristics related to continuous change might also influence who will find a good fit at the organization. In contrast, if the organization is stable and therefore change is episodic, person-organization fit may be related to resistance to change.